It rains for 2-3 weeks straight. I mean, it was solid rain a lot, and we just don't seem to be getting that. It's disappointing.
Longtime Tucsonan Alex Rodriguez talks of how he remembers monsoon years ago compared to now. He tells me one of the reasons he and his family moved to a new house with a view of the city and mountains was so they could watch the monsoon storms roll in. But as Rodriguez explains, that is yet to happen.
I'm telling you, we've been here 3.5 years, and we've gotten maybe 1 or 2 storms in the time we've been here, and it's been a complete disappointment.
Jen Dubois, who has lived in Tucson since 1994, agrees with Rodriguez. She tells me it just hasn't been the same from when she was young.
Raging rivers, like all the time. The Ryuto was full, and you couldn't even cross it in some parts of the city. I remember basically from the day school got out until almost when school would begin, it was like 1 to 2 a week. And I longed for those cooler moments when it was 110 to all of a sudden it's ooh, it's 95. This feels great.
So has monsoon really changed? Well, let's take a look at our climate norms, which is based over a 30-year period. The latest data spans from 1991 through 2020, which replaces the old norms from 1981 to 2010. Now, this graphic shows the average temp and rain totals per decade during the more recent monsoons, along with the precipitation averages from 1951 through the 80s. Yeah, the wetter and cooler 80s were clearly replaced by the warmer and drier decades, leading to our new norms. Now, if you combine that info with the average annual totals, you'll see there is no doubt we have been warmer and drier. In a nutshell, the average annual temp has warmed just over a degree, while the average annual rain totals have decreased by nearly an inch. Then if you take just the monsoon, which is June 15th through the end of September, it too has been drier by nearly 0.4 of an inch. But why? Well, many would love to speculate that answer, but your guess really is as good as mine. Although it may seem like it used to rain every day like clockwork, there's actually no data that proves that. Most likely that idea comes from folks who remember 1 or 2 very active monsoons from when they were younger, and they believe it to be more consistent for a long period of time based on that memory. Regardless of how or why it's changed, Dubois hopes her kids will soon get to witness what a true monsoon storm truly looks like.
I'm waiting for that monsoon because I want them to see it.
Meteorologist April Madison, KGUN 9 on your side.
Monsoon 2020 was pretty much a non-soon and left many southern Arizona residents high and dry. The summer of 2020 was the hottest to ever be recorded, dating back to the late 1800s, and the lack of rain was a reflection of the extreme heat. Most communities didn't even come close to measuring their average monsoon rain totals. In Tucson, at the airport, only 1.62 inches of rain fell. 2020 ranked as the second driest monsoon ever recorded, just slightly behind 1924 when only 1.59 inches of rain fell. Now we look forward to monsoon 2021 with a renewed hope that seasonal thunderstorms will return and bring much needed, much overdue rain back to the desert. Monsoon has many influences, and one of those is tropical activity. So let's head to the eastern Pacific, because storms that develop in this area can help feed moisture into our North American monsoon. El Nino and La Nina, they play a major factor in tropical storm development, and right now sea surface temperatures are running pretty close to average, so we are in a neutral position. The neutral position is expected to continue through the summer, but a shift to a weak La Nina is forecast into the late summer and early fall, and this may limit tropical storm activity, but it could increase the number of storms in the Atlantic. Sometimes those storms do cross the Gulf of Mexico and help feed into our monsoon moisture. So the outlook for the eastern Pacific tropical activity shows close to average storm formation with 16 named storms, 8 of which will become hurricanes, and then we will see also 3 major hurricanes. We also look at forecast models to get an idea of the long-range outlooks. Currently, the Center for the Climate Prediction Center is forecasting temperatures to run much above average, and it looks like rainfall will be at or slightly below average during the monsoon. So this brings us to our prediction for this year's monsoon. And for 2021, we expect an average monsoon that will include some hot, dry stretches with a few active thunderstorm days in between. Kyler Diggs, KGUN 9 on your side.
It's easy to see why Arizona is the lightning photography capital of the U.S. But as much as we welcome those summer storms, we have to respect the risks that come with them. For example, did you know lightning can strike up to 10 miles away from the nearest thunderstorm?
There's a lot of situations where the sense is that it's not really that important, but sooner or later it does unfortunately catch up with people.
Longtime lightning expert and senior scientist with Vaisala, Ron Hawley, has been around lightning detection data for nearly 30 years. He also specializes in lightning safety. Would you agree that lightning is truly one of the most underappreciated weather phenomenons, and not just for its beauty, but its potential to be so dangerous and deadly?
Lightning is something that almost everyone in the world encounters at least once or twice a year. It's probably the most dangerous thing that everyone encounters every year. Not everybody has a tsunami or an earthquake or a hurricane or a tornado, but almost everyone has lightning.
The majority of southern Arizona lightning strikes occur in July and August, which is typically our more active monsoon period. That's also when a lot of people are outside hiking, swimming, and doing the usual outdoor summer activities. The reason it becomes a problem is because a lot of times it's not raining very hard when we have lightning, and sometimes not at all.
One of the studies I did years ago was the distance between individual cloud to ground flashes is several miles. It skips around. It doesn't go in a row. And so you can't predict or identify where that next one's going to be.
Another danger that is becoming more and more frequent is lightning-sparked wildfires. June 5th of this year marked the 1-year anniversary of the Bighorn Fire.
Normally we don't have any thunderstorms at all during that time of year. And somehow this one little weak trough came through. It eked out, I think, 10 or 20 or 30 cloud to ground flashes. And unfortunately, everything was extremely dry. And it just couldn't have been the worst time for it to happen.
Arizona typically has about 500,000 lightning strikes per year. Here's a list of links where you can find all kinds of lightning resources. For example, in the interactive global map link, it shows average lightning density observed from 2016 through 2020. You can even narrow it down to each county in Arizona. So as we head into monsoon, remember, the best place to seek shelter from a storm is a sturdy building or a metal-topped vehicle. When indoors, try to avoid touching wiring or plumbing, and wait at least 30 minutes after the last rumble of thunder before going outside. Meteorologist April Madison, KGUN 9 on your side.
Cotton is one of the few crops that actually like the dry heat. Growers plant seed in early May and they harvest in October. Farm manager Daniel Pacheco has high hopes for the cotton seeds he plants in Marana, but getting them into the hard, dry ground wasn't easy this year.
When we tried to get the plow in the ground, it didn't want to stay in the ground. We broke a lot of plowshares.
While cotton seems to enjoy an arid climate as long as it's irrigated, Pacheco's other crops haven't fared so well. He lost about 30 to 40% of his wheat and sorghum last year.
Sorghum and wheat are grasses basically, and they need that moisture. They need help They need the humidity to pollinate correctly.
Arizona is very likely facing a water shortage in 2022. The decades-long drought has led to falling levels in Lake Mead, which means a reduction to the Central Arizona Project allotment. Pacheco does not rely heavily on CAP water thanks to supplies of groundwater in the area, but the farmers and ranchers in Pinal County do.
The farmers to the north of us are really scared right now. We need water to make crops grow, and crops are what feed us here. We can't be relying on other countries for our food and fiber.
To make matters worse, University of Arizona research shows not only is rainfall down overall, but the average time between storms in the western United States has increased by about 50%.
So in the 1970s, that time was about 30 days, and now it's up to 48 days.
Research hydrologist Joel Biederman and his team made the conclusion after looking at data from hundreds of climate sites. The length of time between rain events can have big impacts when it comes to agriculture, flash flooding, plant life, and wildfires.
If you think about what would keep a forest less likely to burn, imagine that sprinkling a little water on it every few days or every week is probably more effective than dumping a large amount all at the beginning of the summer and then waiting a few months.
Biederman says the climate trends only point to dry spells getting longer and hotter. Pacheco says his family has been dealing with changing weather since the 1950s, but after 20 years of drought and other pressures, things could reach a breaking point in the next 5 years.
If prices stay down in cotton, the landowners are going to be forced to sell, and there won't be any farming here anymore.
Ryan Brennan, KGUN 9 on your side.
Seven agencies within the Southern Arizona Technical Rescue Group are here training in water accident management, one of the many areas firefighters must train in to prepare for swift water rescues.
We practice some swimming techniques when we're going out to victims. We practice how to protect ourselves against victims that are in despair and actually just latch onto us.
All firefighters get trained in some sort of swift water emergency, and they keep the training fresh no matter how active or inactive monsoon may turn out to be.
The monsoon last year was kind of, for the most part, non-existent. We were short on rainfall, but we still have to be prepared every year. We never know. This year's projected to be a little bit higher. Rainfall totals.
Last year, even though there wasn't significant rainfall, TFD did record 2 deaths due to a storm. And in the Tucson area, year after year, crews typically get called to the same locations after seeing heavy rainfall.
Just on the east side, we can point out Alamo Wash being one of them. If you're looking at the south side, then we're looking more like Rodeo Wash. And then always the Santa Cruz, the Rito, those places can always cause us problems.
And to make sure you don't run into problems during a heavy storm, Captain Noriega has this to say.
Be safe out there. Obviously, if there's a roadblock or there's any question about it, don't cross it. And then be aware of weather conditions out there. So even though it might not be raining in your immediate area, watch the weather and expect washes to be flooded in areas that are not experiencing rain.
The next step to training will be going out to the Salt River to do practice with more water flow. Taja Davis, KGUN 9 on your side.
The summer heat can feel scorching anywhere you go in the metro area, but in places where there's more concrete and pavement, they have it even worse. Asphalt, concrete, brick, these things bake in the sun and hold on to the heat. The energy radiates out at night, keeping things from cooling off. It's called the urban heat island effect and is part of the reason why Tucson is one of the fastest warming cities in the country.
When you look at urban planning and you look at freeways, almost inevitably along the freeways are areas where there is less shade, lower socioeconomic environment.
Pima County Public Health Director Dr. Teresa Colin says the phenomenon is not impacting all areas equally. Poorer neighborhoods often have fewer parks and trees and more concrete.
In certain parts of the community, primarily in the southern part of the city, the heat difference can be 7 to 8 degrees.
Colin says rising temperatures are a public health issue. Not only can it cause heat stroke and death, but prolonged exposure can lead to other illnesses.
If you are in a situation where you are exposed to heat and you don't drink enough water regularly, you can end up with chronic kidney disease.
The disparity in the heat means minorities and those with fewer resources are getting hit the hardest, something the county also saw tracking the spread of COVID-19.
We see that same difference when we look at heat. And I think that that's what's been most striking to us is that if we talk about vulnerability and we talk about equity, it means we have to deal with this climate differential that we're seeing in the county.
Colin says simple things like planting trees and adding green space in underserved areas can make a big difference.
But we can all at least understand that the need to make sure we can mitigate heat, that we have adequate water, that to go to the parks, that we have adequate parks for everybody.
Brian Brennan, KGUN 9 on your side. If you're going hiking in the desert, there's some things you're going to want to take with you. You're going to want to bring a hat, some water, and some knowledge about monsoon. The heat might be the first danger you expect to run into during monsoon, but the weather can change fast this time of year.
We've done both. We've hiked people out and we've helicoptered them out.
Southern Arizona Rescue Association volunteer John Prokarowicz has seen more than his share of tragedies over the years, including at popular hiking spots like Tanca Verde Falls and Bear Canyon.
It was swimmable and, everybody was having fun, and this wall of water came through that was 6-7 feet high and swept a couple of people away.
Prokarowicz says heavy rains in the mountains can hit you in the valleys as a flash flood long after the skies have cleared. You should always check the weather report for the day you're hiking and for the 2 days prior. You also want to make sure someone knows where you're going.
Decide where you're going to go hiking. Tell somebody where you're going hiking. Don't hike alone, and go where you say you're going.
After that, it's all about preparation. Bring a fully charged phone and enough water to last the whole hike. Take a flashlight in case it gets dark and something to protect you if it rains.
We've had folks with hypothermia when it's 65 degrees outside. After the temperature drops after a sudden rainstorm and they get wet.
Prokarowicz says the best tool to keep yourself safe is some knowledge about the weather and the area. And if you run into rising water on your hike, don't try to cross it.
Be prepared. Think about where you're going and what's likely to happen while you're out there.
Brian Brennan, KGUN 9 on your side.
Monsoon brings a wide variety of weather to southern Arizona. Some beautiful sights are created by big billowing clouds that eventually transform into powerful thunderstorms capable of producing flooding rain and damaging wind. Several types of wind can result from thunderstorms: straight line wind, microbursts or macrobursts, and gust fronts, otherwise known as outflow boundaries. All are common during monsoon. All of these wind events can cause extensive damage to property and even threaten lives. For these reasons, it's good to become familiar with the different types of wind associated with our monsoon thunderstorms. Let's start with straight line wind. Thunderstorms occupy a lot of space and displace a lot of air. That air needs to go somewhere, and it's often one of the first things we notice when a thunderstorm is approaching. It's important to keep in mind that straight line wind is not related to any rotation in the storm, such as a tornado. Depending on where you are in relation to the storm, you may feel anything from a stiff breeze to a strong blast of wind that continues for several minutes. If wind speeds reach 58 miles an hour or greater, the thunderstorm can officially be classified as a severe thunderstorm, and the National Weather Service will issue a severe thunderstorm warning for the affected area. The next type of wind event that is fairly common to southern Arizona during a monsoon is microburst or a macroburst. These are rapidly descending columns of air that originate from within the thunderstorm as rain begins to fall from the upper levels of the storm. These columns of air race towards the ground, and when they reach the surface, splash down and fan out with great force. The only difference between a microburst and a macroburst is their size. A microburst is less than 2.5 miles in diameter when it reaches the ground. A macroburst is larger than 2.5 miles in diameter when it makes contact with the ground. There are wet and dry microbursts and macrobursts. The only difference between them is whether rain reaches the ground or not. If not, it is known as a dry micro or macroburst. We'll take a look at more about how microburst forms in just a little bit, but first let's mention another type of wind that is produced by a micro or macroburst. A gust front, otherwise known as an outflow boundary, is the leading edge of wind generated by a micro or macroburst. An outflow boundary can often be detected on radar because of the amount of dust and debris that it kicks into the air. As the outflow boundary moves along the ground, it blows more dust into the air and creates big dust storms, frequently seen on an active monsoon day throughout southern Arizona. Outflow boundaries also help form new thunderstorms as warm air gets lifted into the cooler air. The air condenses, creates clouds, and they eventually grow into new thunderstorms. Now let's talk about how a microburst forms. The day generally starts pretty sunny with some dry air up near the surface and a little bit of moisture above the surface, and that moisture is just enough to create some high-based thunderstorms. Rain begins to fall from the thunderstorm but evaporates before it reaches the ground because it can't survive the trip through the much drier air near the surface. Even though the rain evaporates before reaching the ground, it rapidly cools the surrounding air. Cool air sinks, and it sinks fast. As the air descends towards the ground, it picks up speed and strength. When the column of air strikes the ground, it fans out in all directions and can bring a sudden gust of wind capable of reaching 100 miles an hour or more. This quick change in wind speed blows dust into the air and can cause extensive damage to property in just a matter of seconds. Dust storms created by the microbursts are a big threat to drivers, as good visibility can be reduced to almost zero visibility in a matter of several feet. If you encounter a dust storm, slow down, pull off the side of the road as far as you can and still be in a safe place. Turn off your lights and sit out the dust storm while keeping your foot off the brake. The idea here is to not have any lights on, because if you do, other drivers may try to follow your tail lights and not realize you're at a complete stop, and you take a big risk of being hit from behind. Plus, most dust storms last less than 20 minutes, so it won't be too long before you can be on your way. Remember, pull aside, stay alive. Many times, people assume their property damage was the result of a microburst. In many cases, this is true. However, keep in mind, in order to have received damage from a microburst, there must be thunderstorms in the area. Otherwise, the damage was likely the result of a strong gust of wind or maybe even a dust devil. No thunderstorms, no microburst. Microbursts play such a big role in our monsoon activity. From a distance, they can be fascinating to observe. However, if caught in or near a microburst, it can quickly turn into a dangerous situation. Preparation is the key to avoiding costly property damage or personal injury. Be sure to secure all loose items and furniture before the thunderstorms even begin. Also, pay attention to all the watches and warnings. The First Warning Weather Team will keep you up to date on the latest severe weather information via our television, social media, and website sources. As the thunderstorm passes, to help protect yourself, move to a place of safety to avoid blowing dust and debris. If taking shelter in a structure, make sure it's a sturdy structure enough to withstand wind that could possibly gust up to 100 miles an hour. Stay away from trees as they may blow over or large branches may break off and fall to the ground. And remember to stay far away from any downed power lines and always assume they still have power running through them. Having a better understanding of the various types of wind events associated with monsoon and taking the necessary steps to be prepared will help prevent damage to your property and could potentially save your life when monsoon strikes. Kyler Diggs, KGUN, 9 on your side.
Dust storms can happen at any time in the state, but the Arizona Department of Transportation says this first-of-its-kind technology will hopefully help save lives.
We are ready for the 2021 monsoon season.
And Garen Groff with ADOT says drivers will see that once they pass a 10-mile section on I-10 between Picacho and Eloy.
It is an automated system that can detect when dust starts to reduce visibility.
He says the key to the $6.5 million system is having 13 visibility detectors.
They use beams of light to detect the density of dust particles in the air. Once that happens, the system will automatically activate variable speed limit signs and reduce the regular posted speed limit of 75 to as low as 35.
The variable speed limit is enforceable by law. The most visible element of the system is a big white dome on a 20-foot tower located on the interchange of I-10 and State Route 87.
That is a weather radar, and ADOT is sharing that information with the National Weather Service so they have specific real-time information on what's happening in this area.
4 closed-circuit cameras are also located along the stretch, feeding live videos into ADOT's Traffic Operations Center in Phoenix with real-time information on traffic flow and conditions.
Hopefully that will supplement the radars that we currently have in Phoenix and the one that's southeast of Tucson. That's located about midway between the 2 Weather Service radars.
This tower can detect a storm that's up to 40 miles away, something meteorologist Ken Drew says will be beneficial for the National Weather Service.
Dust storms can create visibilities down to zero where you really can't see where you're driving.
This is all about giving drivers more reaction time.
More reaction time because they say dust storms have proven to be deadly.
Our best advice for driving in a dust storm is to not drive in a dust storm. If you see a big wall of dust coming up, exit the highway as soon as you can.
You want to pull off the road as far as you safely can, and then stop your car, put it in park, take your foot off the brake, and turn your lights off. That way, other vehicles behind you won't see your taillights and run into you.
And regardless of technology on the road, Groff says nothing replaces common sense.
Drivers need to be aware of their surroundings at all times, but especially on this section of I-10 on windy days or during the monsoon, which takes place from mid-June through September.
Lustelia Caballero, KGUN 9 on your side.
In preparation for monsoon, this is the section of the Downtown Links project, a part of the 2006 voter-approved Regional Authority Plan. It's in its third and final stage, building a new roadway and adding improvements such as underground storm drains.
All of our capital improvement projects, which mainly are Regional Transportation Authority projects, we improve all the underground storm drain system as well as all brand new utilities, water lines, sewer lines, and so forth.
Almost all of the improvement projects the Department of Transportation has done over the last 2 years has worked to get the water off the roadway and under it instead.
It becomes a public safety hazard. So what little rain that we have had, the underground storm drain systems have been effective. The key is, again, public safety. Getting the water underground as opposed to being on top of the roadway.
A major sight to see during a heavy monsoon storm, the Stone Avenue underpass flooded with water.
You know, many people that have lived in Tucson for a long time know what happens at the Stone Avenue underpass and how that floods, and you know, we've had vehicles stuck in there.
Graham says this Downtown Links project will eliminate that. Infrastructure and public safety gets improved, but these projects also help residents in other ways.
It takes people out of the 100-year floodplain, so they save on insurance. So there's a lot of positives when it comes to our capital improvement projects.
The Downtown Links project is set to be completed early 2023. Taja Davis, KGUN 9, on your side.
It's a unique underpass, and when we get some really good monsoon storms or summer thunderstorms, it's been known to fill up rather quickly.
Mike Graham has seen just how quickly the Stone Avenue underpass can fill up during his 21 years with TDOT. KGUN 9's traffic reporter Alan Big Al Caith has been dealing with the flooding there even longer.
I got to KGUN in 1990, and every year we've had someone come out and shoot somebody or somebodies stuck in the wash. Sometimes one direction, one northbound and one southbound. It's pretty embarrassing if you get caught in that. And I know a couple of people personally who have gotten caught. One of them left town. He's back east now.
The historic railroad bridge over Stone Avenue was built in 1936. The underpass immediately began flooding during heavy monsoon storms. 1 year later, in July of 1937, a young Arizona Daily Star reporter was desperate for a story. Howard O. Welty penned an article chronicling 13-year-old Elmira Dokes. He claimed she was the first to swim across the pond that forms in the Stone Avenue underpass. She successfully swam from the Toole Avenue landing to the northern shore. According to Tucson folklorist Big Jim Griffith, the story was so good, locals started calling the flooded area Lake Elmira.
Lots of people read it, and it was great. It was a great story. Yeah. It's a darn good story.
A terrific storyteller himself, Griffith explains that today we might use the name Joe Blow when referring to someone we don't know. Back then, people used to use the name Joe Dokes. The fictional Elmira Dokes was said to be the daughter of Tucsonan Joseph Dokes. Another clue the story was made up.
Circumstance, timing, everything right.
The story took off, and the name Lake Elmira stuck. The Daily Star even making reference to the name in a July 1957 caption of a front-page photo. Fast forward to the 1980s and the installation of a plaque remembering the fictional history of Lake Elmira. Big Jim Griffith has first-hand knowledge of an unnamed sculptor and his tall friend who installed the plaque under the cover of darkness.
As far as I know, it's still there. People say it's gone, but it has been painted over now. So I think it may be still there.
The plaque does still exist. It's been painted over, but still visible from the pedestrian walkway as you head north. But Lake Elmira may soon no longer exist. The city of Tucson is busy installing a massive new drainage system under the north and south ends of Stone.
Its purpose is to alleviate the underpass from flooding. So we certainly hope to have this section done before we get our first monsoon storm and see how it works.
That's right, Lake Elmira will be no more. The annual lake will disappear, and so might the legend of young Elmira Dokes.
It's actually going to be kind of sad to see it go away, not from a driver's perspective, which is where I live, but from a person that wants to get the flavor of Tucson. They won't probably ever see that again.
Pat Paris, KGUN 9 on your side.
Firefighters with the Boulder Ranch Fire District say a fire can start and spread within seconds in the right conditions.
All it takes is one spark.
Adam Gerald with the Boulder Ranch Fire District reminding folks to be extra alert during this time of year.
70% of wildland fires are human caused. We've had fires start on the side of the road simply by people throwing a cigarette out the window.
Nature, the driving factor for the others.
So the Bighorn fire was a lightning caused fire. That evening we had a dry thunderstorm move through it. There wasn't a lot of moisture associated with that storm. And then there just wasn't a lot of places to safely put firefighters on their ground to attack that fire based on that topography.
The Bighorn fire burned more than 119 17,000 acres, but spared structures and there were no deaths.
We had upwards of 1,200 firefighters working on it at some point from all over the country.
Fire Captain Colin Port with the Golder Ranch Fire District is a part of the wildland team. He was sent out to California to battle one of the state's biggest wildfires.
The Carr Fire in 2018 was a big fire. It impacted a lot of communities, and we had a lot of fatalities on it.
It burned more than 229,000 acres, destroyed at least 1,600 structures, and killed 8 people.
It was just a nasty fire and a lot of stuff to navigate every day.
From keeping his crew safe and motivated to figuring out how the wind and topography would affect the direction of the flames.
You're just constantly playing catch up.
But he says his extensive training made a huge difference out there during their 16-hour shifts.
You learn about fuels, so what's burning, weather, and then you'll also learn about topography, so the terrain that's affecting the fire.
When it comes to crews going out to battle the blaze, there are hot shots.
That's interagency, meaning that it can work on federal, state, private lands.
There are also hand crews.
Hand crews are doing a lot of the same work. They may just have different levels of capability. And so the hand crews are going to be using mostly hand tools, so shovels, Pulaskis, which are like an axe. They'll be using chainsaws and other specific tools meant to remove the fuel down to bare mineral soil so that the fire can't cross that.
Not to mention they have water tenders and other fire trucks, planes, choppers ready to assist in battling any blaze. As of now, Port and his team will continue training year-round to make sure they're ready to put out any fires.
If you see something, say something. The faster we could get reports on it, the faster we could get firefighters out there and addressing the fire, so hopefully it won't get very big.
Lustelia Caballero, KGUN 9, on your side.